which does make that a very powerful experience. And I should really move on. Mean Girls, very cool. Also, I don't have almost any experience with chick flick type films, so that genre, like, I don't have much of a basis for it, but I enjoyed the heck out of those two films. The House is a film that is way less popular than all of the ones that I've talked about, because it is actually, I believe, a Netflix original, movies. I absolutely loved that film. I actually rewatched it this year, and it's an absolutely beautiful film. The performances is one of my favorite things about it, because it's something that I think I take for granted regarding animation as a medium, and in this movie in particular, that is what sells it so damn much. I could feel Miles Morales' emotional arc of the film, and how much they just focused the film in such a grounded way on the personal, scenes, just with family, and, talking with the ones he loves, and it's just very, it's a beautiful film. And then also, the very intense climax, with the bad guy, and the bad guy's performance is just great. It's a really, very intense performance. The other whole part of the film that I love so much is the stylistic animation of this film. It's just so gorgeous. There is a film where Gwen hugs her father, and it looks like the stylism of lots of animated movies now is kind of like a painting or an illustration. You can see the brush strokes or the outlines, and in this scene it's like a watercolor with like cool tones, and they're on opposite sides of the frame, and when she goes to him to hug, warm colors just fade through the frame, and it's just, that's an amazing film. And also just great action and handling such a big, grand scale story as they did. They actually handled it, well. Like, it doesn't feel like just throwing cameos in there, even though it is, but it's like, that's not the focus, that's not the reason we love the film. It's cool, and it's a fun, very, very fun part. But, yeah, exactly, there you go. Madam Web, I saw that right after that movie. It was fun. It was a good time. People make a big deal out of it. It's not worth it. It reminds me, personally, like, a lot of these Sony films and, like, non-MCU Marvel films remind me of, like, or non-MCU superhero films. They remind me of, like, early 2000s, superhero films, where it's just, there's something a little off, something a little disconnected from, like, the MCU and their style of doing things, their formula. And there's just something also almost a little, like, underwhelming, and yet sometimes that can be kind of nice, just watching this, like, okay movie. At least for me. People hated a lot of those movies back then too, and that's obvious. I mean, there's so many. There's Daredevil, Elektra, Catwoman, I think people like Blade, but there's a lot of movies that are very stylistically early 2000s. Green Lantern, it's a little bit later, but back to Madam Web. I did also see Morbius, which is one of the good, comparisons. I enjoyed this movie a little bit more than Morbius, personally. I enjoyed Morbius for what it was as well. I'm basically saying the same thing as with Morbius. Like, it was just kind of like it was similar to some of those that I just mentioned. It's just like a different thing, and one of the reasons I value a different thing so much more than most people, it seems, is just because I'm worried about not only actual monopolies, like corporate-wise, but also creative monopolies. I don't want everything to just look like the same thing. I'm scared of it all just pooling into the same thing. I want more creative diversity, even if it comes with some of these okay films in my experience. And reactions to these crazy situations and scenarios that they've gotten themselves into in life are just, they're very good. And I think their, dialogue together, their quips and all that, it's a very good time, and it's a pretty funny time, and also the depiction of Madam Web's superpowers was, I thought, very good for what it was. I really enjoyed this foresight, and there were also a couple other elements. The ambulance thing I only slightly knew, and that was kind of cool to see, this whole superpowered character story from that perspective. Also, the actor Adam Scott, I know him from Parks and Rec, didn't know he was going to be in this. I don't watch movie trailers, and that was awesome. And he's playing a character named Ben, and that was freaking crazy and really cool. And I know that's dorky of me to be saying about Madam Web, but why not? It had something to be excited about and shocked. I was genuinely surprised by that choice, and happy for him, because he now always gets to say that he played that character, even if it was in Madam Web. Imaginary was unexpected. I arrived late at that film, and the climax went in a very unexpected and big direction. I'm still, in a way, processing how different of a film that makes the rest of it, because the rest of it felt a bit more standard. There was a lot of fake jump scares, and I was really hoping, personally, another personal preference thing, I was really hoping for more actual jump scares, more actual danger, and I think the PG-13 rating unfortunately hindered the film in that way. But also, you can do that with a PG-13 rating. but not least, certainly, in fact, most, in a way, for me personally, Dune and Dune Part 2. The first Dune, I had an interesting experience with because I didn't read the book, so it helped a lot to rewatch it later with my dad, who did read the book, and he kind of explained a lot of the context for me, and that really helped, and that made me get pretty invested in the characters and the world and understand stuff, and that made it like a pretty great experience of a movie. We rewatched it again a month before the second one released, and the second one, I now know the characters and the world, and it was an extremely powerful experience for me. I actually got like proper goosebumps like multiple times in the movie. Been seeing a lot of movies lately, and it's been a while. It's been a while since that has happened, and it's a very amazing experience. It's a very intense movie with very real world parallels to right now, and those are very important to be discussed in this world right now, especially in such a popular setting. Like, a lot of people are going to view this. I just wish they knew the parallels, you know, but it's an incredible experience watching Dune 2, and I also know how impactful this one element of the film is to so many people. I've been learning about certain things about the world over the last couple of years, and that's just another thing about Dune 2 that made it very like powerful for me. Is just thinking about the parallel of how it would feel in the real world circumstances of like how people would feel, how much these situations